When I was 12 and my younger sister was 10, my dad was in the military, and we lived on a military base. It was around Halloween, and I was walking to my quote-unquote boyfriend's house to skateboard, i.e. kickflipping ad nauseum in his parking lot, and think we were Tony Hawk. Between two of the buildings, I spotted a creeper in a Michael Myers mask, who receded into the shadows when I spotted him. It being right around Halloween, I was like, whatever. I saw him again the next morning whilst waiting for the bus, but the other kids thought I was trying to scare them because he had skunked behind a building and no one else saw him. I was finding it kind of sketchy at this point, but didn't really press the issue. On Halloween, my sister and I went trick-or-treating and saw this guy dressed as Michael Myers following us between the houses all night. We never acknowledged him and avoided the shadows. That night, my sister came into my room and said, "We have a problem." I went into her room, and the Michael Myers creep was standing in our backyard, staring up at her window. We got our parents, but he jetted when they got there. A week later, someone tried to kidnap my sister while she was walking to school. I have no idea if it was related, but God, it was unsettling. This incident happened to me last year on Halloween. My younger brother and I were home alone, since our parents had gone out to a Halloween party. They had tasked us with handing out candy to trick-or-treaters. This bummed me and my brother out, because we had made plans to go trick-or-treating with our friends. A lot of people stopped by our house, and by 10 PM, almost all of the candy was gone. My brother and I decided that we'd eat the rest. We were sitting on the couch, watching a scary movie and stuffing ourselves with candy, when there was a knock at the door. I stormed off the couch, wondering who the hell could be knocking at our door this late. I assumed it was just some late-night trick-or-treaters. Even if that was the case though, I had turned the porch light and Halloween decorations off, which should have been a dead giveaway that we were out of candy, or that we weren't home. So, I assumed it was my parents. Being cautious, I looked through the peephole and saw a suspicious man standing on our front porch. He was wearing a black hoodie with the hood over his head, which made it difficult to see his face. The only details of his face that I could spot was that he had a beard and dry, crusty lips. There was no way this guy was a trick-or-treater, because he wasn't wearing a costume and was far too old to be trick-or-treating alone. His hands were stuffed in the front pocket of his hoodie, and he also looked very thin. Every single red flag went off in my head about this guy. There was no way in hell I was going to open the door. Still looking through the peephole, I watched as he knocked on the door again. He seemed desperate for us to open the door, and was shaking a bit. It wasn't cold outside, definitely not cold enough for someone to be trembling. He was giving me a bad vibe, and I just wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible. "We're out of candy," I shouted. I watched as a smile spread across his face. It wasn't a friendly smile. "Are you alone in there?" the man asked, almost in a mocking voice. His voice was raspy and dry. My younger brother asked me if he should call the police, gripping his cell phone. The man let out a low grumble and said, "Sounds like you're not alone in there." I continued to watch him through the peephole. His hands were still wedged tightly into his pocket, and he was still shaking a bit. I began to wonder if he was armed. I decided to take action and spoke to him in the most intimidating voice I could. "Get the fuck away from my house, or I will call the police." His smile faded, and he bared his teeth. His teeth were piss yellow, and I concluded that he was probably some homeless crackhead. He had a look of fury plastered on his face. Fortunately, he left without trying to break in, probably because he knew I wasn't fucking around with him. I didn't stop watching him through the peephole until I saw that he was completely off of our property. My brother and I breathed a sigh of relief and decided not to call the police. My brother and I were a bit paranoid about this and watched TV until our parents came home. We didn't tell them about the man, since he hadn't really tried to harm us. Now, when I look back to this, I wish we had called the police, because maybe we would have been able to prevent a murder. You see, the next day, we found out that the elderly woman who lived a few houses down from us had been brutally murdered. Her neighbor had found her lying on her front porch. She had been stabbed multiple times in the chest and neck. My brother and I immediately knew who had done it, and we told the police what we knew. They couldn't do much from the information we had given them, since we hadn't seen many details of his face. They went on the hunt for the man, but they never caught him. I blame myself for that poor old lady's murder, because I could have prevented it from happening by just calling the police. I think the most disturbing thing of all of this is the fact that he didn't take anything from the lady's house. Her house had been left untouched, but he could have gone in and taken what he wanted since her door was wide open. This meant that he just wanted to kill. That was his only intention. He didn't want money or jewelry. He only had the urge to murder. Halloween has, unfortunately, never been a big deal out here in Scotland, and that's always bummed me out, because I love Halloween. But after this year, I think I'll be happy never celebrating it again. My street, and the next street over, have a lot of young kids who go out trick-or-treating, so while I was out shopping all day with my mum, we decided to pick up some sweets, in case anyone came to our door. I had plans to go to the cinema to see Ouija with my boyfriend, so when I got home, I was getting myself ready to go out, and my mum was busy putting the shopping away, so when the first load of kids came to the door, I was the one who had to answer it. There were children from our street, the next one over, and some I didn't recognize, as well as an adult at the end of the path, who I guessed was either a father or an older brother by their size, and they were dressed in all black, and had some sort of mask covering their face, but it wasn't anything I recognized from a movie or anything. They all told me their jokes, and I gave them their treats, and they made their way back down the path and onto the next house. I was about to close the door when I noticed that the guy with all the kids was still standing on the end of my path, and my skin started to crawl when I realized that he was just staring at me. I backed away slowly into the house and watched him as he raised his hand and waved very slowly at me, and I was about to call out to him when my mum came to the door to make sure I was all right, and he took off in the opposite direction of the children. He hadn't been with them at all, and he left as soon as he realized that I wasn't home alone. I was completely freaked out, and I told my boyfriend all about it when he came to the house to pick me up. I quickly forgot all about it when we were watching the movie. When I finally got home, it was really late, and trick-or-treating was well and truly over around here. When I got inside, my mum was just getting ready to take the dogs out for a walk so they could do their last-minute business, and they would meet my dad on his way back from work, so I was going to be home alone. I don't really like being home alone, but it's worse on Halloween, and it always has been. Anyway, I was home alone, and I grabbed some snacks and went up to my bedroom and onto my computer so that I could do some writing, scroll through Tumblr, and listen to music. My dad had bought a motion-censored light and attached it to the wall of our house right outside my window. Normally, it will go off whenever a cat walks along our fence, but it will usually go off after a couple of minutes. I always know when the light has come on, because it lights up my whole room, given where it's placed, and while I was sitting at my computer, the light came on. I ignored it at first, because I knew it would go off soon. But 5 minutes passed, and it still hadn't gone off, so I opened my blinds to have a look outside and see what's going on. My stomach almost fell out of my arse when I looked out and saw the creep from hours before, sitting on the fence, waving at my window to keep the light on. His waving slowed down suddenly when he spotted me, and it was all seriously creepy again, and I didn't know what to do. I just got flashbacks from before. Luckily, I heard the front door open and my parents coming into the house with the dogs, so I rushed down the stairs and I started screaming at them about the guy on the fence. My dad didn't question me. He just took the dogs and rushed through the house, through the back door, and ran outside. Then I heard him shouting, "Get the fuck out of here, you creep! I'm going to phone the police." Dad scared him off, but I convinced him not to call the police, because I didn't want to relive the whole thing again. I just wanted to go to sleep and forget all about the whole night. I wouldn't have hesitated to call the police if he had followed the kids that I had given the candy to at my door, but he hadn't, and when I was home, it was far too late for any children to be outside. I did warn my neighbours about it the next morning though, and asked them if they had seen anyone or if their children had, but nobody had seen a thing. Hey guys, Lazy here, and thank you very much for listening. Since October has arrived, I'm going to be bringing you Halloween-themed content every Saturday of this month, so stay tuned for that. Don't forget to check out Anthony's artwork, and you'll hear from me again very, very soon. Stay spooky, and remember, the best things happen in the dark.